research in marketing and has been the dean and director of the school as well. An ardent speaker and keen researcher, Professor Bansal is playing a key role in planning and implementation of national education policy in the state at higher education level. It's an honor to have you, sir, at this discussion. Next honorable panelist is Professor Narendra Kumar Vishnui. He is the Professor of Economics and Dean Humanities and Social Sciences at Guru Jambeshwar University of Science and Technology, Hisar. His area of specialization includes economic policy analysis, regional competitiveness, and urban economics. He has also served as the chairman to committee to prepare a preliminary report on the status of private universities of state of Haryana by Haryana State Higher Education. Sir, it's a privilege to have you at this discussion. And last but not the least, our panelist, Professor Jyoti Rana, she has just joined. She is currently serving as the Dean Academic Affairs at Sri Vishwakarma Skill University, Haryana. She is the founder chairperson of Foundation for Management, Research and Training, an NGO that is committed to work on 3E mission, that is education, employment, and expression. Professor Jyoti Rana is an experienced educator and administrator, having more than 2 decades of experience with demonstrated ability to teach, motivate, and direct students while maintaining high interest and achievement levels. We welcome you, ma'am, to this plenary session. So this is all about the introduction of our esteemed panelists, and it is my duty to mention here that to get the maximum diverse and valuable inputs, we have reserved 10 to 12 minutes for each of our panelists. And then there would be a question answer session if it happens. So to start with, I request Sri Rajiv Chawla ji to share, does he really feel that there are skill gaps among the students completing their professional education? Over to you, Chawla sir.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be part of such an enlightening gathering and enlightened gathering. And I see great professors and teachers, scholars who are here, and of course the Gen Next. I would very quickly share a screen, and idea is to give a sequence to my thoughts, and I'm just sharing my screen with everyone. All right. So I'll try to be brief and to the point, and in this session. And the session is actually to discuss the challenges before the professional education vis-a-vis part of the national education policy that we have right now. I think the biggest challenge for anything today in the world is that we are a very fast changing world today. And especially in terms of business and profession, things are changing faster than ever before. In fact, if you ask me, even in the last 4 or 5 years, if something new has come, it lives its life, which otherwise would take centuries to achieve. Unfortunately, the life cycle of the biggest technologies and companies are also extremely short nowadays. And so much so that the biggest companies like even let's say Facebook, one of the biggest companies in the world today, which calls itself Meta, that has suddenly seen a steep downfall because of various reasons. And one of the reasons is that a company like Facebook is seeing lesser usage and lesser newcomers that are coming in. Maybe the viewership or the subscription has gone higher in Instagram or something else. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the biggest challenge is in today's profession is that we are changing extremely fast. So one I mentioned is the fast changing technologies that that are all around us. Second is the gap between the traditional teaching and the evolving millennials. For example, today's newcomer to the college or a professional college today could be much more conversant with new technologies than the professor himself or herself. A student would have faster access to Google, would have faster usage, nimble fingers on their hands, and they would be accessing internet and technology and other tech platforms much faster than the professors themselves. And the idea is that the answer to virtually every question that you ask a professor is already there on Google. So you don't even need to go to a library today to look for an answer. So this gap between the traditional teaching and evolving millennials is a huge challenge in the professional education. And third is the gap between academia and industries. Sometimes we believe that this gap is narrowing, coming down, but I'm of the opinion that this gap is widening much more than ever before. And again, the reason is that the new technologies that are emerging so fast are, let us say, professors in the colleges today conversant with those new technologies. And so let us say a professor spends about 30, 35 years of his or her career in a traditional profession. Unless the professor keeps evolving himself and or herself, how would they transmit that information and knowledge to the new generation? So these three are, to me, the biggest challenges before the professional education today, as we see. We are seeing disruption that is all around, and I don't have to narrate what is disruption. The way Ola and Uber disrupted the traditional taxi services, the way digital camera had disrupted and threw Kodak out of the business. All these are amazing examples all around us. And second is digitalization. So disruption and digitalization, these two major things are changing every profession, every business. So many traditional businesses, products that we used to buy are today out of the market. Just because you carry a smartphone in your hand, there are goods worth 5.4 crore that you don't need. From a video game to a video camera to a computer, there are hundreds of things, everything you carry in that small gadget. So you don't need those factories and those businesses anymore. And so that is a huge thing. So many of the things that we've been seeing in the past are no more required by mankind. And that would be the case in times to come as well. To give another example, electric vehicle is again there. A normal car has about 2,000 moving parts and as many auto component industries, etc. And electric vehicle has 18 moving parts. So another 3 years, 4 years from now, hundreds, perhaps thousands of auto component industries because they are not prepared for the new, that is the electric vehicle world. So the point is, how does an educational institution prepare talent for these fast changing professional technologies and disruptions? There are many new technologies which are now coming up in the world. Sensors, the internet, IoT as we call, artificial intelligence, robotics, energy storage, 3D printing. These are very fast changing technologies. Let us say traditional colleges would be preparing you for typical banking, but the fintech industries have already moved beyond that. And finance today is available on the app or in an instrument. So how do you connect and prepare for that? So a lot of these changes are happening in the world of businesses and reality. And this is a huge challenge for professional colleges on how to create talent that serves the unknown, because those technologies are as yet unknown. Those are the skills that we need in the future. And these skills were never taught to us in school and colleges. And so point is that by the time you prepare a profession in a college today, and they come out of the college, there's something new in the market, and for which the student would still be a student. So we all need to reinvent ourselves, and this is extremely important. And therefore, every professional institution has actually to become an ecosystem for good education. That's it. And good knowledge management. And that is the most important, because if we continue to do things the same way we have been doing till now, we will not get the same results anymore. And therefore, everything that we do in our colleges, etc., need to change. There are many high-rise sectors that are there in the market: defense production, aerospace, future of mobility, which is changing so fast, energy efficient products, green technologies, infrastructures, homes, constructions, but not in the traditional way, in the new way that the things are around, smart feature products. Similarly, e-commerce, services, the new skilling, and likewise, women. I mean, they are the new power, and what they need in future. The power of millennials, the products for millennials, their tastes are different, their requirements are different, and that is what the business world is gearing up for. Health, fitness, these are the sectors which are high-rise sectors. And similarly, fintech, data analysis, artificial intelligence, which perhaps very soon, maybe a few years from now, we don't even need colleges or institutions anymore that are not using artificial intelligence themselves. And then, of course, the work from home, the flexi time, these are the things that have changed the world forever. And therefore, every university, every school of business has to reevaluate and whether we are ready for this kind of a future. So what do we expect from today's world of education and today's professional setups? We believe that we have to prepare students where their basic fundamentals are right. Second, we need to create students and professionals for tomorrow who should know how and where to find answers. So if you don't know an answer, it is not a handicap. But if in an interview, I ask you a question, can you find that answer within seconds with a phone in your hand or with your laptop on your table? So if you can come back to me with answers that you don't know today, but you can find answers to, I need that kind of a professional. So we need to create professionals who can find answers, not learn all answers. And then, of course, the new age skills, the computing, analytic, artificial intelligence, creative thinking. This is what today's professional needs. Of course, social, moral, and cultural behavior that our national education policy also focuses on. And fifth, and the most important thing, is sustainability in terms of environment, etc. So professionals, if adept with these 5 basics, are ready for future. And that is why the challenge before universities and colleges is how to prepare these professionals. And solution is something that I'm sharing with you in this slide. The first solution that I recommend is campus sharing. The way a medical college is set up only in a medical hospital. You cannot have a medical college only as a college. Medical college must be in a hospital. Similarly, today requirement is that engineering college should be in a factory. It should be the same campus. Similarly, a business institution could be in a same campus. So campus sharing is something which will become a reality very soon. Why do we need to train students somewhere else and then bring to our business areas? Why an education institution not be placed right within? Second, the co-working and the dual system or the apprenticeship model. This has been tried in India. It is going, and increasingly students are learning part in colleges and part in industries and other areas. And this has to grow. This has to grow so much so that either my business should be in your campus or your campus, a branch of that should be in my business. It should be integrated like a medical college and a hospital. And third is sharing of knowledge resources. For example, I would have new machines in my factories or my businesses, which may not be there in an engineering college. Similarly, new technologies that someone else today is working on may not have that access in a university or in every university or college. So therefore, it is also the use of knowledge resources. Your professors should be my managers as well, my advisors. And similarly, some of my professionals can be your teachers, in various forms. So these are the three solutions also that I find to this. But I thank you for all the time. And if there are any questions, I would be open, please.
It was wonderful, sir. Very crisp and short, but to the point, I must say. And yes, we all feel as a people in academics, we also feel the need of the hour is this, that sharing is important. So that we are generally talking about a connect, industry, academia connect. But this is the high time we have to actually connect, not just talk about it. Sir, we'll take up the question at the end. So as
okay.
you have said that you have to attend a meeting.
So I'll make a move. Thank you so much.
Money.
I wish,
sir, please. Sanjeev,
I
sir.
think since Rajiv Chawla ji have to leave, so if there are one or two quick questions, then we can take up quickly because the student can get benefited, can get some more insight. If any of the student have any question, a quick question, please. Okay, then our panelists can.
Okay, I'll ask a question. Do you like the idea of sharing the campuses, sharing your education centers in my businesses, or my business comes to your campus, and on a continual basis, not as a formality? So you can take this opinion poll towards the end of the session, and where everybody can vote.
I am in. I mean,
it's a great idea.
It's a great idea.
It's if I can comment on this, it's a wonderful idea. Only thing is we need to chalk out modalities.
Naturally.
Because you see, a lot of things are there where common understanding of different issues, how to approach the issue. So if
but
that
definitely
can be done,
at least Dr. NK, to begin with, we can increase the connect, the visits at least. Like
yes.
Do think about the hospital model. A medical college is always allowed only in a hospital. So if someone has a 300-bedded hospital or a 500-bedded hospital, only then a college can be opened.
That's true, Rajiv.
And they have a mechanism there. They teach there, of course, the students, and the students work with existing doctors, looking at the patients on day-to-day basis. And the flow is so smooth that naturally, by the time they come out, they're already deeply integrated in a medical.
And I think it's always pleasure listening to you, Rajiv sir, and I can vouch on this. That if we are thinking on integrating industry with academia, so your organization, your support can be an immense support for the academia, and you have been working in this area, and this is really wonderful and welcoming idea to share, the campuses, to share the infrastructure, so that, the bridge between academia and industry can be possible. And it is possible, and it should be.
So if I may add to what Mr. Rajiv has suggested, so like medical college, the example you have given, if we see the people who teach there are the doctors. So in the same way, it's not like that in management, people who teach, they have the experience of being manager or have the field experience. So maybe the first idea, other than the campus, can be to give exposure of the industry to the teachers who have been in the academics, but giving the practical aspect of the today's industrial arena ecosystem. That exchange may help.
Well, if interestingly, I could recollect one interesting example. in Cochin in 1993, they started an experiment, and it has been highly successful experiment with Cochin Technical University. They have affiliated Techno Park. So it was started on 171 acre of land. So they set up, TCS was started its campus, then other industries also came. It was 170 acres, then it went up to 500 acres. So I mean, in Kerala, what Mr. Rajiv is suggesting, they have adopted it very successfully. And at one time, industrial revolution bypassed Kerala, but presently Kerala is one of the more vibrant states in the country. And just because they could connect its education with industry, and particularly IT and biotech industry. So that example is also there, and we can learn a lot from that. And if I can add, we tried that thing in 2008 in our university. Somehow we could not take it forward. So we can again think of that thing, something like this. And
Okay, thank you, Dr. Naren, and Rajiv ji. Thank you for initiating the panel discussion, and that's what a panel discussion is all about. So we'll miss your presence, but nevertheless, there's always more time and more situations than we can sit together.
I'll connect with you in your campus by integrating more. Thank you so much.
That's great.
Most welcome.
Okay, see you soon. See you soon. Okay, Mani, over to you.
Hello, sir. Thanks for sparing your time. So, Mr. Rajiv has mentioned few of the gaps and few of the skills that are required. Then I'm taking our discussion over to Professor Jyoti Rana, because she's being connected with the skill part, at least for the state of Haryana. So, ma'am, over to you. What is your outlook towards this requirement, and how, as a skill university, we are planning to fill these gaps?
Thank you, and I hope I'm properly audible.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, all right. So I think Mr. Chawla has given me a right point to speak about, and my co-panelists, they were also expressing their concurrence that academia and industry bridge should be there. And all of us in our institutions, we are working in this direction. The similar experiment we are doing in Skill University, as Professor Vishnui was also talking about in Kerala, that we are adding Industry Connect here in Haryana through skill education. We call it a skill education, but in all the programs, either we are running, in-campus programs and out-campus programs, or research in our university, we are adding industry partners in our all programs. This is mandatory for us, when we are launching any program, either it is BBA or it is MBA or it is BVOC or MVOC, that we are partnering with the industries. And not only these partnerships are on paper, but we are executing it very successfully. So there are 60% stakeholders, and they are providing practical trainings to our students, and in terms of on-the-job training or in terms of internships. And very successfully, we are running this model, and the industry is contributing in terms of designing curriculum, designing pedagogy for our programs. So we are experimenting, and now we have a confidence that we can go ahead in this direction. So that was an important point which I have taken from Mr. Chawla's point. As far as NEP is concerned and the challenges I can see, I just want to share my screen quickly, so that I think you need to make me host for this.
Already you are done, Jyoti. You can now, please.
Okay, thank you. Just give me 1 minute only. I'm just sharing my screen. I just want to share some. I think my screen is visible to everyone.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's visible now. Is it? Is this visible?
Dr. Jyoti, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So as I look at this NEP, so broadly, every one of us, is aware that there are different aspects which are being mentioned under NEP. There are certain provisions which are being made for making the universities and colleges as quality institutions. And it talks about the institutional restructuring and consolidation also. Then it talks about the holistic education, basically, and how the teachers are to be imparted training. So when I look at it, I look at NEP from this angle, basically, if I classify the whole NEP in terms of, various verticals. So I just look at it, it's a combined document of 6 C's, which talks about, co-curricular activities, which talks about critical thinking, communication, continuous reviews, creativity, and culture. Then it talks about, the values, providing values from and connecting values from the literature, from the Vedas, from the other holistic, holistic literature which is available. Then it talks about, the emotions. It talks about, 4 E's in terms of engagement, employability, and equity. Similarly, that it talks about certain other things also in terms of quality, quest, and questions, inquiry-based education. That how, we need to develop inquiry-based education among students. So definitely that this summarizes into, one word that is called holistic education, but that is not a simple term. That requires a lot of efforts, a lot of re-engineering, a lot of, restructuring. So when I talk about re-engineering, when I talk about rehauling, when I talk about, restructuring, again, it puts a lot of challenges because whenever we expect any change, so that change brings a lot of new insights as well, and a lot of efforts are also being required. So when I was looking at the institutional restructuring, so the first challenge, I feel, that how to bridge, or how to bridge a gap between higher education institutions versus skill education, when he talks about, definitely it becomes a point of concern for me because I come from the skill education background. So as we are working in this area, and NEP talks about that in every education institution, there should be some, practical based education. There should be some, skill education. So now the next important concern comes before me, that how my student, who is taking admission in my organization, if he really wants to go after 1 year or 2 years, he wants to go and join some other higher education institution. So is there any bridge between these two organizations, or are these organizations confusing my student? Are they really different? Are they really, providing what is being, talked in this document that is called NEP 2020? So that is an area of concern, that is how we can bridge that gap, how all higher education institutions in the nation, they can be at the same platform, and they can bring, or they can devise a system which can provide students an option, which is the option of flexibility, which is an option of more liberty, which is an option for more choices, so that the student can map their choices and interest with the education, and they can come up, or they can join those courses and those programs which they really like. So if we talk in the global context, we will see that a lot of options are being given at the international level. So definitely that when we are doing anything in the nation, we are seeing that in the global perspective. So when we are talking the whole globe, the whole, you can say globe as well as the different nations all together. And we are talking about, one policy, basically, one education policy. So how that education at national level is going to be integrated with the education at international level. So that is also one of the very prominent challenges, which I find that in this document, which it proposes, that it is putting some questions before us to work on, so that, if those questions are being addressed, so it can be a very, very, you can say, student-friendly education in India as well. So my first point is, when we are talking about institutional restructuring, we need to look at that how we can bridge this gap between, skill education institutions and, the professional education institutions, which are being provided by the universities in the conventional mode. Second important thing, when we talk about holistic and multidisciplinary education. So in this, definitely there is a requirement of, thinking about the interest of the students. Can we think about those programs which can bring some element of engineering, some element of management, some element of applied sciences, because it talks about the liberal arts also. For example, I always felt, being a management student, I always felt that there should be a necessary part of psychology in my programs, in the area of management. And when the teachers are joining any university or any college, that should be the necessary part of their education or eligibility, that is the psychology, because they are dealing with the students. That's a live element. So from that perspective, I really feel that we need to work, but it is again a challenge that how we can design certain programs which bring, the multidisciplinary element in that, so that it could attract those students who really want to have a pinch of emotional intelligence. They really want to have a pinch of technology. They really want to have a pinch of management. So again, this is again a challenge, that how we can address that challenge. Similarly, it talks about the ABC. All of us are aware, and it talks about multiple entry and exit system. Similarly, in my organization, we are working very rigorously on that. And now we are working within the organization. But I think it's a challenge before us, that how we can offer these options to the students, so the students not within the organization, not within the university, but outside the university also, they can be given the benefit of that credit, and the students can go and they can join the other programs in other universities. So it's a very good and valuable proposition. But again, it brings a challenge, that how we are going to map our programs and, the programs with the other university and the other higher education institution. That is also very important, which I feel. Similarly, we talk about, optimum learning environments and support for the students that really require a lot of rigor, and that really require a lot of efforts by all the higher education institutions, so that jointly we can start certain programs. If one university is having a strength in one area, that can become a strength of other higher education institutions as well. One more thing, it talks about that conceptual education and skill-based education. Professor Vishnui very rightly mentioned that they are trying, and all other, I'm pretty sure all other higher education institutions, they also might be working in this area, that the skill-based education or vocation education or industry-based education should be incorporated. But availability of industries in those areas where the higher education institutions are situated, and the inputs which are really required, getting those inputs from the industry, again, this is a challenge. So, so these are the, the challenges which I foresee. But at the same time, I can see a lot of, you can say, a lot of solutions and possibilities also, because as I already mentioned, we are working in this area, and I'm pretty sure that all of us, who are discussing this issue, in this plenary session, that shows that all of us really want to work in this area. So the collaborations with industries, the collaborations among universities in terms of exchange of trainings, exchange of programs, and in policy making, also inviting people from other organizations to bring one policy together at this one platform, so that the students can be given what is being proposed in NEP. So from my point of view, NEP has a lot of optimism, but that optimism requires a lot of effort, which I think, and I'm sure, all of us will be adopting, and, and we will be pursuing this, in this direction, which will be beneficial for the students. Thank you for giving me time, and thank you for patience hearing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for your inputs, and very well connected with the previous presenters' points. Now I wish to invite our next panelist, Professor Sunita. And ma'am, we wish to have an outlook about, because you are connected with the policymakers. So if you are having any insight about it, how they are thinking in implementing it, or any other challenge you see for national education policy. So over to you, ma'am, for your views.
Thank you, Dr. Mani, and I'm happy that I'm the third panelist. So a lot of base has been already set. So Mr. Rajiv, he highlighted the skill gap. Professor Jyoti highlighted the kind of apprehensions as a being from academia, being from specifically the skill university. What do you think? So my point, so there is a disclaimer first. So whatever I'll be sharing is not my own knowledge, but yes, like Dr. Mani, you requested, it is a kind of insight which I have gathered from all my colleagues here in the government, and as well as in the academia. So I'll just start the screen sharing. So Sanjeev sir, आप मुझे permission देंगे screen share करने की?
We have it, ma'am.
You have all the permissions from his side.
Okay. So my screen is visible?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. So, when I was actually listening to Mr. Rajiv, and specifically to Mr. Rajiv, so whatever he was kind of giving a wish list from the industry side. So when I was listening to that, and I was looking at whatever is there in the policy, it shows as if it is fulfilling all the wish lists. It is like, it is giving everything we wanted for all these years. After so many decades, this policy has come with the hard work of the committee headed by Dr. Kasturi Rangan, and it's like it has come at a right time, and the objective which is stated in the policy are very, very noble. Like, maybe at the cost of repetition, I may share some of the highlights which even Professor Jyoti shared. So the issues of like a person is stuck with one kind of option after 10th class, that flexibility has been given, and the more emphasis is on holistic learning, more emphasis on evidence-based thinking, on scientific temper, and learners, they can now pick and choose, and they can design their learning journey. So that is one of the highlights. And the second is this multidisciplinary approach, which is connecting different institutions, different subjects. So in a way, the subject silos we are trying to break from this policy. And we are, like Dr. Jyoti also mentioned, that we are highlighting, we are emphasizing on conceptual learning rather than rote learning. And there will be more emphasis on cultivating life skills. Whatever, like it was like whatever Mr. Rajiv was demanding, it was already there. So it is there in the policy. Now what? So already we have designed a policy which has diagnosed the issue of education, the problems of the education very well. And they have kind of given a very good prescription. It is at that stage. I'm coming from a perspective, I will not comment, so it's not good also to comment being with a government institute on the content part, on the smaller content elements of the policy. What I want to comment on, or I want to discuss, is about the broader parts in the sense, like from the professional education side. So what is there in the policy? It's there in the policy that all standalone these institutions will be multidisciplinary. What else is there? That we will prepare professionals in agriculture and veterinary sciences through integrated education. Then we will try to set up agriculture technology parks, which are connected to the locals and the regions, so that they can help in the agriculture field. Then we are also kind of saying that bilingual thing, even in higher education, it is there in the school education, but in law also they are suggesting that they should have bilingual. Then healthcare system, they are trying to integrate Ayush and healthcare system, and more preventive care and community medicine, that they are trying to suggest the policy. And then technical education has to be offered within multidisciplinary way. That is also another thing. And like demand from industry side, that there should be more emphasis on subjects, like focus should be more on AI, 3D machining, big data analysis, machine learning, and all these are for the professional education. Now, what I see are the major challenges before professional education per se, as well as a broad policy, formulation. So I want to highlight two things. One is, if you see the targets and timelines, they are so optimistic. They are so optimistic that we want to implement this policy in entirety by 2040. We want to have gross this 100% GER by 2030. Teachers to be prepared by 2030. So I was reading somewhere, it was given in the newspaper, I think, that if you have to get this kind of cross enrollment ratio, even at higher education, you have to open every week one university. So that is the kind of rigor, that is the kind of funding you require to fulfill this aim at the rate we want to achieve it. So the targets are so optimistic, but issues, what are the issues in achieving these targets? That I want to highlight. So in any policy, there are many steps. So policy has a cycle of its own. So there is there are agenda, there are issues. To tackle that, the policy is formed. Then after policy formulation, it is implemented, then it is evaluated, and there's a full cycle. So the first part is policy formulation. I'll say we are excellent in formulating the policies. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a good prescription. It's a good diagnosis as well as the prescription. But now, if you see vis-a-vis policy implementation, the policy formulation part, there are few dimensions which I want to discuss here. The first and foremost dimension, which is required for any policy to be implemented properly, you need that policy to be politically acceptable. And specifically in this area, education being the concurrent issue, where you are dependent on states to implement this, where the states, like Narendra sir highlighted, the Kerala is doing some experiment already. If you need the full buy-in of states, every political party should be accepting this policy, should be accepting the suggestions of the policy. Another example is the multiple language issue. If you want that to be implemented, again, all states have to be on board for that. You cannot do it alone. Next is socially desirable. Is the policy, the suggestions given by policy are socially desirable? I personally feel yes, they are. We all stakeholders, including children, parents, teachers, universities, industry, everybody was feeling that there is skill gap. You know, there are some jobs where we are not getting people who are properly trained, and there are people who are not having proper skills. So unemployment is there and skill gap is there. This policy is trying to bridge that gap, and this is socially desirable in the sense we wanted this change. Whether this is the change or not, that we can debate, but we wanted the change, and the change is about to come. It's there. Third thing is the policy technologically feasible? Now, in the COVID era, we have seen how much digital divide we have within the sections of within the different sections of the society. How much we are divided in terms of our digital reach. And many of the suggestions which are given in the policy, they are dependent on the technical infrastructure. They are dependent on the things which are more technical guidance. If we want to achieve this, we have to ensure that this digital gap, it is bridged. It is there. It is, I mean, the resources are given for that. Next and most crucial aspect from my side is financially viable. Right. So there is a mention in the policy about giving 6% of GDP to the education, and already being these 2.5 years being very harsh economically, and there are so much so many side government is pulled for the resources. We do not know how much fund actually government will be able to allocate to education. Now, reason being, government always wants immediate returns. They always want there should be the rate of return wherever they invest the fund should be immediate. In education, you cannot get immediate results. It takes at least 2 generations to see the impact. So if that is the case, the government has to be really, really, willing to dedicate a particular amount of fund which is required to implement all these suggestions. My view is the implementers, when it is still being planned how to implement all these steps. So when we are planning these, maybe we can select some low hanging fruits where the fund demand is not very high, and some things can be executed. Like, for example, teachers. I particularly want to take this aspect of teachers. If you want to have this kind of education in professional universities and institutes, we have to focus on developing our teachers. We have been ignoring them. It is like we have selected a teacher. Now it is teacher's responsibility to keep himself or herself updated for the requirement of the institute. But it should be otherwise also. It should be like every teacher should be given a kind of platform where he or she can explore where he want to go, where he want to expertise. We cannot hire already expert teachers in every field, everywhere. The teachers who are already there, they need a different kind of training now. They need a different kind of investment now. So like in the morning, it was being discussed that we have to learn and then unlearn and relearn. It is the existing teachers who have to do this thing now. Now they have to unlearn many things and relearn. In helping this relearn, every institute, government, every stakeholder have to invest in teachers' development. I can give example of my academy. We really follow that that every faculty is every year given a chance to opt for one online course and one physical course of our choice, wherever we want to expertise other than the mandatory courses which are there. Like, for example, in universities, we have mandatory courses. The second thing is, maybe as teachers, we have to think about, unlearning. We have to leave this ego that we are now senior teachers and who can teach us. We have perfect example where I have colleagues around me who are of 30 years of seniority, and they are ready to learn. We have a session design lab where even a senior most teacher, he will present his session that I'm planning to do like this. Is it okay? Is it looking okay to you? So we as colleagues, we give the suggestions and we help that teacher to make the best use of the given time. So my point is that teacher is that connection between the fulfillment of these aims and the key stakeholder, that is the child or the student. Teacher is the major connection, and we have to pay full attention to that. Next important point I want to highlight, at the cost of wherever I am, I should be cautious about that, but administratively doable. There are so many changes which are very rigorous, and they are kind of restructuring so many things. Is this restructuring equally accepted by all stakeholders who are already there, at leadership position, who are already there at key positions? Will they accept this change? Will they help in implementing this change as we want this policy to do? And lastly, it should not become like in education. I was told one of the retired education secretary, he was sharing that there are so many cases in the court pending by the teachers, on selection, on promotion. So the policy should be judicially tenable, that it should stand its hold, whatever it envisions. So these are the things which actually policymakers should look for, that whether their policy is passing through all these filters. And if it is passing through filters, then we come to the next part, that is policy implementation. Because no matter how good intent it is, if it is not implemented in the field, it is nothing. It is like how good we are in our intention to execute any plan. If we are not doing anything, we are not moving. So implementation is equally important. And for implementation, now I want to bring in my area here. So we use this one model in leadership, and same goes for the policy implementation also. I want to share this. One is that for any policy to be successful, it is mandatory that all stakeholders, all the agencies which are important for implementation should share the vision of the policy. Everybody should on board for this vision of the policy. If they are on board, then they will help in implementation. If they are not, they will go against. So they will work against you and will not let the policy get implemented. The second thing, if you see, even if the vision is there, even if people are willing to do, the alignment of resources, alignment I means all the funds, all the HR, all the everything which is required to implement this policy successfully, that alignment is required within these resources. If we work in different direction, then again the policy implementation will not be successful. And lastly, it needs everybody's commitment. Everybody means the last unit, the last college, the last university has to come on board to implement. So largely, if you see, if one of the component is missing, the policy will be impacted. So if direction is not clear, people will not know what we are doing. So even if there are resources, even if there are funds, even if people are willing to do things, they will not be able to help. If direction is there and people are buying into that direction, but alignment is not there, you have not provided funds, you have not provided human resources, still there are so many vacancies in the colleges, then again it will have an impact on the policy. And lastly, if commitment is missing, no matter how good is the vision, no matter how much resources are available, if commitment is not there, again the implementation will not be successful. So how I look at this two pillars, policy formulation and implementation, is that so there is no tight compartment I'm creating. I'm just roughly aligning that if it is politically acceptable and socially desirable, there are chances that policy will have the direction component also. So the politically is again question mark here in this policy. Second is if it is technologically feasible and financially viable, the alignment of resources can be done, can be achieved. So if we can provide enough resources, it will be good. And lastly, if the people who are involved in restructuring of the processes of the institutions, if they are on board and they are committed, then again we can achieve the third element, that is commitment. So if this full slide, it shows if these components are there, we can achieve this and we can implement this policy. So my only idea is that the intentions being very good, conception being very good, will not help until unless we operationalize each and every detail of the policy. Like Dr. Jyoti was telling that how I will do that the conceptual skills and rote learning, how I will do that credit system, how I will implement that. So to last mile detail for each and every unit which is there in the field, that is required, that has to be operationalized, we have to give a comprehensive roadmap to each and every stakeholder of the policy. So that's all from my side, and thank you so much, and I'll be open for question at the end. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Wonderfully explained how the policies are being framed out and what they are up to and what is expected from the policy makers, and how much effort policy makers are doing to get it implemented. So all the insights are very valuable, I think, to all the listeners. Now I will move our discussion to Professor Harbhajan Bansal. Sir, we have heard from the industry perspective. We have heard about the skills, what we are doing in it. We have heard about the policy makers. Now, how we are responding to all the requirements as an academia. So your viewpoints are sought after. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Harbhajan Bansal, Dean Academic Affairs, Guru Jambeshwar University of Science and Technology. We have listened to three very learned speakers, Mr. Rajiv Arora ji, Professor Surita, and Professor Jyoti Rana. And the views of all these three speakers converge at a particular point, and the point is a mental revolution on the part of academic leaders so as to align their entire learning system in such a way that we have a great workforce. You see, India had been a world leader, a Vishwa Guru, for a long time. And then suddenly we were ruled by foreigners for almost 1,000 years. And now again, the aspiration of India is coming to the fore. And new education policy, it has its cherished goal that the kind of graduates and postgraduates we need to get out of universities, they must be knowledgeable, enlightened, socially conscious, and professionally skilled, who at the same time have intellectual curiosity. They are creative, having a scientific temper. They must be embedded with a spirit of service, and they must have respect for ethical and constitutional values. I have talked to lots of academicians over a period of last 6 months, and everybody says that these are very lofty objectives. And each time somebody tells me it's a lofty objective, I am happy that new education policy is having them, because there is a need to have exactly these things if we want to be a world leader. The only thing that is required is proper implementation of new education policy. And each one of us, at least who is listening to this plenary session and this discussion, each one of the teacher, each one of the academic leader, every vice chancellor, registrar, policymaker, everybody has got to be a part of this entire implementation of new education policy. I personally feel that restructuring, I mean, most of the speakers have said that education has to be restructured. Restructuring, I think, is a smaller word. It should be a mental revolution in the academic world, in the academia, wherein everybody understands how we can create a new system that can cater to the need of the society, academia, as well as the industry. The new education policy entails that we must have a flexible system, multiple entry, multiple exit. Say, for example, a student is doing 4 years engineering program. So the first 2 years may be certificate course in engineering, third year may be diploma, and fourth year, if somebody is able to do all the 4 years, then he may be given BTech. So today, in the present system, if a student completes 2 years and then leaves the program, he is a dropout. His entire work done in the first year goes waste. But new education policy says that first 2 years should be designed in such a way that that student can be at least given a certificate course in engineering. So this would require that the entire syllabi and the demagogic practices, they have to be revolutionized. In the last 6 months or so, I have talked to almost 50 vice chancellors and dean academic affairs of different universities in the country, and talked about implementation of new education policy. There are lots of challenges, and every university, every higher education institution is thinking in terms of its own strategies to cope with these challenges. And once we are able to define what can be the best practices to implement new education policy in the academic institutes, especially in the context of professional education, I think we can have a very good system in place in the next 2-3 years, wherein we are able to have great people out of our education institutions. And another part of new education policy is that it is not simply the professional skills that are sought to be cultivated through new education policy. In fact, the universal human values as well as indigenousness, they are also to the fore. The new education policy talks about holistic personality development rather than just professional development of the professionals. So the education has not only to focus on the professional skills, but also on the sanskars, the empathy, love for the country, spirit of service, respect for the ethical values, respect for the constitutional values, truth, non-violence. All these things also must be inculcated in the graduates and postgraduates. And another interesting part in the new education policy is integrating humanities and arts with science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Even when a person is undertaking a program in, say, engineering, he may do some part of it in, say, music also. A few weeks back, I was going through my Facebook profile, and I saw the chairperson of music department of Kurukshetra University took PhD viva of computer science in Punjab University, Chandigarh, who has worked on some, developing some kind of a software for music. And the chairperson of the music department took the viva, PhD viva. That kind of spirit we must have according to this. The old paradigm has to be shut off, and a new paradigm has to be cultivated. With these words, I put an end to this talk I have had with you. You are most welcome to interact with me on this point. Anybody, please.
Thank you very much, sir, for your input. Now we are coming to Professor N.K. Vishnui. Sir, we call you our economist for the university. So, what are your viewpoints? Can we do it?
Thank you, Mani. And in fact, thank you very much for inviting me. And the only problem and challenge before me is that immediately after lunch and after listening to already such a learned persons, 4-5 persons who have spoken almost on all the dimensions of the new education policy, I do not know what you expect from me. So it's a very difficult task, and I'll try to speak on my mind on something on this. And the point you have pointedly, I mean, you have asked me that as an economist, what do you think? So I'll start from there only. In fact, what Mr. Chawla said, what Professor Jyoti Rana had said, Professor Sunita had also mentioned all those things, and Professor Bansal has also touched. Because basically policy, move around the same direction, that how can we make our education a holistic exercise? How can we break the silos and make students understand things? So here I would start from 2 points, 2 examples to make things more, interesting, because it's afternoon and siesta time. So in fact, I have given this example earlier also one time, that in 1853, US attacked Japan. It's long back, but still it's very relevant. In 1853, US Admiral Perry attacked Tokyo. And the Tokyo at the time, the samurais, and they had very proud culture and very prosperous country by Eastern standards and good civilization. So when they were attacked, they were overwhelmed by the Americans in 1853. So surprisingly, after 6 months of, first he attacked, then he forced Americans forced Japanese to have a trade treaty to the, in favor of US. So when he left, Admiral Perry left Japan, all samurais gathered in Tokyo and they discussed. And surprisingly, they decided that it was the technology that was the real problem, because Americans could have better technology. At that time, samurais were holding 2 swords. Rakha karte the apne paas mein, so they decided that this sword is now no more required. The gun is there, and then artillery is there, ships are there, steam ships are there. So they have got such a better technology. So surprisingly, in 1853, Japanese samurai decided that the national honor, the service to the country, your nation, would be to master the technology. So from 1853 to 1868, we call it Meiji Restoration, when king was restored in place of samurais in 1868. And within the next 30 years, Japan was the first Asian country to become a developed country in terms of technology, in terms of education, in terms of institutions, in terms of prosperity. So the point is that Japan could, understand, they could realize the importance of education, and particularly technology education. Unfortunately, if you remember that we keep on saying that army is defending the nation. Yes, army defend the borders, not the nations. So basically, nation is defended by the universities. I can say this thing with with all sense of responsibility, because you see that Manhattan Project, 4 or 5 universities were preparing the atomic bomb for USA, and they could prepare it early. Again, Japan had to face the lot of bad time when it was nuked by the US after Second World War in 1945. Similarly, this is one example. Again, so US or European countries recognized at the time that education is the key factor for prosperity, for, competitiveness, for technology, for nations. All the things required for a country, for a nation, start and ends with education. So when Sputnik was sent in the space by communist country Russia, so in 1960, the US election was fought on this issue, and Kennedy could win this election because he promised that he would overhaul the education system of the US so that US is not lagging behind the Russian communist countries, and US can outcompete Russia at some time. So the Americans are so scared and so concerned, so sensitive about their education till date, that the moment we could see that in 80s when Japan was doing very well, so Americans were again scared. They started again focusing on their education. Now, when Chinese universities are coming up, and you see, US is almost 5 times ahead of the Chinese, but still they do not want this gap to close down. So again, Biden administration has started focusing on education. So when Professor Sunita said that political, desirability or social acceptance or desirability, the point is that this education policy has come at a very right time, and the time is that when India is, transforming from, it can be, it has, it can have in near future, in foreseeable future, India can become it can transition from a poor country to a middle income country. To become a rich country is a very, distant dream. As an economist, I can say, but yes, if we can transform into $10,000 or 12, you see, total GDP does not mean much. The more important thing is per capita GDP. So in India, despite all these claims, we still have only 2,000 rupees, $2,000 per capita. Even China is having $10,000 to $12,000 per capita, and US is having $65,000. So we have so much distance to cover, and for that, even to reach this $10,000, we need to grow at a rate of around 8-10% per annum for next 15 to 20 years. So how can we do this thing? When we say that university, Professor Mr. Chawla was saying industry should be within the campus, or university should go to industry, or industry should come to the, he's absolutely right. But the thing is that everything would come only and only when we realize that education is not for jobs. So the only thing I can differ with some of the, thinkers or speakers even today, that the job of a university, the basic purpose of a university is not to provide employment to students or to anybody. The purpose of a university is to simply explore the truth, explore new things, and make experiments, try something new, and create interest in education for the sake of education for the students. Luckily, this policy do have this policy make a provision for these things, and it depends on the teachers how they realize it. And if we keep on harping on this dimension that employability should be there, somebody should prove that why this course or that course or this education or that education can be useful to industry or to anybody, then I'm afraid we would miss the real thing in this whole, because you see, there are so many things we never realize. Who could have thought that email can be offered free of cost, and some Samir Bhatia can have a new business model. No teacher, no researcher could have visualized. So because when teacher or somebody, saying I am more experienced, we suggest a business model, this would certainly work, but it cannot disrupt the existing things. So disruption comes only when altogether new thinking comes, and new thinking would come when you are thinking freely rather than thinking its benefits, cost benefit analysis, and its usability, practicability. So universities are, visualized to be a free world where you have a free thinking, and for free thinking, this policy has made a provision that if a doctor is there and doctor is also thinking about literature, about art, about fine arts, about music, so you can also become a good doctor. Similarly, we see the example of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs could succeed not only because he was a great engineer or something like this. His sense of aesthetics also took him to that far because Apple is today Apple. Because he always believed in that things should be, beautiful. So to make things beautiful, you need to develop an aesthetic sense. And aesthetic sense would come only when you understand literature, you understand fine arts and things like this. So that is why we need to have a holistic education. So what my point is that this education policy has made absolutely perfectly in right direction. Most of this, almost all the things are absolutely correct. Only thing is we need to appreciate them in totality. Why I'm saying this thing? Because unfortunately, on the one hand, government has made this policy and they have promised to implement it, as Professor Sunita has rightly mentioned, milestones and all that. On the other hand, the same governments, state governments, and also government of India, they are starting somebody saying that we would start a defense university, somebody saying we would start a sports university. So the new education policy has mentioned that even IIMs would not serve the purpose, AIMS would not serve the purpose, agriculture university would not serve the purpose. University means university. University means all the type of educations, technical and agriculture, medical, and your social science, humanities, arts, everything should be under one roof. I think I have time is
Yes, yes.
so only in the last I would say that Professor Radhakrishnan, the great educationist, had mentioned this thing in his book Education and Civilization, that the great ideas in a university never comes from labs or classrooms. They come from the canteens, from the in the lawns of the universities, when students of different streams are sitting together, arguing, having heated discussions. In the heat of those movements, some wonderful things always come out. New ideas, new thinking, new approach comes out. So we need to encourage those things. And this approach, again, I would repeat this, cost benefit analysis, or what is the benefit. If we have this approach, I'm sorry, education would not go far in the country. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Vishnui. And in the foot of the professor, you very aptly put it, the importance of education. And how much difference right education and right education policy can make in terms of winning wars and winning your position amongst the international community. One thing, as you put up, that universities are not for the job. So I like just add a little one pointer, that university's job is much beyond than creating jobs. But yes, like in current arena, we can think in multiple ways and multiple direction, that and the job skill like imparting skill can be one of the motto in among the many other things. So and that's what that we have the discussions for, that the diverse views comes out, and we can discuss. The more we debate, the better direction we'll have. And that's, as Professor Sunita put it up, that we need the right direction, alignment, and implementation. So thank you, Professor Vishnui. Now we have heard all the panelists. It's a time for the listeners, the viewers, to have their say. And I must say that the more questions are there, the more queries are there, the better will be the outcome of the panel. So yes, participants, anybody having any kind of question, any kind of observation to any of the panelists, please, most welcome. I still understand that being online is a little different thing, but still, yes, please, questions, please. Or otherwise, as I say in the class, if nobody's asking the question, then being an host and coordinator, I'll have to begin it myself. So I expect the students to have a couple of questions from the people sitting around me. I think, but anyway, let me initiate the debate, Professor Vishnui. And I think Professor Sunita is also there, Professor Jyoti is there, Dr. Bansal is sitting with me. See, like having heard a lot of discussions, a lot of debates over last couple of years on new education policy, and let's call it National Education Policy 2020. There's much less debate on the utility and the importance of this new education policy. But like the issue is like the kind of, as Professor Vishnui put it, like I am furthering is like taking the cue from him and also taking the cue from Professor Sunita. Like, don't you see, Professor Naren, that the whole ecosystem need to be revolutionized? Like the kind of fragmented system that we have at right now. Okay, this is this university, like okay, the skill university, technological university, and then law university, and then fine art university, so they like the implementer are quite confused. On the one side, they are talking of dismantling the boundary and getting one, and on the second side, they are not taking the autonomy away. They are limiting the institutions, but also in terms of they are confining the focus of academia to more like closed setups. So what would you say about this? And also the Professor Nitarani will also comment on this.
Well, Sanjeev, you see what I said. Unfortunately, we in our country somehow do not appreciate the importance of education in a holistic manner. So when policy was prepared, if you permit me 2 minutes digression, it's not digression. In fact, before this Kasturi Ranjan committee, we had a committee headed by K. Subramaniam. He was the chief cabinet secretary to Government of India. So when this report for new education policy came, surprisingly, it also proposed a lot of things. And one of the things was that all India service, educational service. When it was opposed, I mean, by almost every academician from country and also abroad, it was ridiculed. So to cover it up, government appointed Kasturi Ranjan committee, and Kasturi Ranjan committee had a new, I mean, that report was shelved and this was accepted. So in this, the panel of eminent academicians could prepare this report. Unfortunately, again, you see the policymakers, whether they are bureaucrats or even politicians, so they take education as it can give skill, it can give some jobs and something like this. That's why we keep on saying that we should have some connect between university and industry. We focus a lot of things like this. If I can add this thing, that the world over, great universities have automatically created a lot of high-tech industries. You see Harvard, you see Stanford, you see even ISC Bangalore. So universities have a much bigger job. That the perspective of university somehow is missing in the country. They do not appreciate that university is for such bigger things where industry connect would be there, and nation would also benefit, and a lot of other benefits would also come. So to my mind, our policy makers have not been able to appreciate the true import of the universities or education further.
Professor Sunita, your comment, then I'll move to Professor Jyoti also. But don't you think that policy making is okay, but implementers are in a kind of a confusion, state to state?
So yes. Yeah. So what means I can sense from your question is what I was explaining in my presentation, this confusion in the mind of stakeholders about the real intent of the policy that is visible here in you also, and like Professor Jyoti was also hinting towards that yes, these policy makers have to actually understand that whether the university education, we are on the same page about university education. Are we using, like Professor Vishnui is saying, are we using education as a part of that, how I can decrease unemployment in my area? That is the only concern the officer posted at a place will have. Can we go above that? Then maybe somewhere the policy formulators, they have missed this buzz of keeping people like you on board, maybe to understand that what exactly they want to create as higher education system, which can not only generate people who are employable, but actually what Vishnoi sir was hinting, that your borders are not secured by army or defense forces, but the universities. right? So that could have been the good idea. But nonetheless, now maybe it's time for us, now I'm coming to your side, for us academicians to understand what these policy formulators were trying to say and how we can achieve the aim, in a best possible way, where we can achieve our own university aim as well as what policy is hinting towards. So that is my take on that.
Thanks, Professor Sunita. Now, I have two person with me, Professor Jyoti and Professor Bansal, those who are Dean of Academic Affairs at their respective university, and perhaps in charge with implementing this policy making at the highest level. So my question to both of the professor, that what kind of difficulties are the university really understanding the basic the paradigm, the basic vision of this new policy, and if yes, then what kind of hurdles and issues are they are finding in implementing it? Hurdles within the institution and hurdles from the policy makers or the say the resource providers or the government. So quickly, over to you, Jyoti.
Thank you. Thank you for raising this question, because I think this is a question of every individual in any organization or in any education institution. So for me, the hurdle within the university is, the preparedness, preparedness first, and the second is the mindset. So these are the two important things, which I feel they are going to be a hurdle. First, when I talk about the mindset means being into skill education. Again, my concern becomes more serious, because we in skill education, or if I take the reference of NEP, it talks about more practical education. It talks about, more trainings. It talks about more collaborations, basically. And if we look at our conventional systems, so somewhere, that academicians or all the human resource, who are associated with implementation. So somewhere, they are conditioned towards the conventional system. So overhauling of that, and or you can say disruptive thinking is required to maintain NEP. A lot of innovations are required for maintaining the essence of this document, so that it should not become a mere document, rather than it becomes an execution guidelines for everyone. So the first is the mindset, which I mentioned. I'm sorry. And the second thing is the preparedness. Preparedness means that it requires a lot of things. We need to train our staff. We need to train even the policy makers also, who are in the processes of statutory approvals or the government approvals or the policy making. So not only, the academicians are required this training, but rather than every stakeholder requires some training and some awareness about this and how it is going to be. And one more thing from the student side also, somewhere, the resistance of some at some extent it is being experienced, because when you are talking about hands-on trainings, when you are talking about mixing up two subjects or two disciplines, if you're talking about the multiple entries and multiple exits, you're talking about industry collaborations. So it's very difficult to be on the expectations of industry, right? So these are the very fancy terms.
Okay, so basically, we cutting you short. Basically,
Yeah.
you mean that we need to spread a word about the vision of the new education policy to the different stakeholders, so that the chances of their falling in line are more. They buy into this new concept.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dr. Bansal,
Uh,
the kind of problem you are having at your end.
As I said earlier too, during the course of last 3, 4, 5 months, I have talked to almost 50 vice chancellor and dean academic affairs of different universities regarding implementation of NEP. And almost everybody says that there should be some consensus at the national level so that national education policy can be effectively implemented. Say, for example, if our university designs MBA program in such a way that any student who has done the first year may be given a postgraduate diploma in management, and once he completes the second year, he can be given the degree of MBA. Now, suppose we redesign the syllabus and make it that way. The student does his MBA first year from here, gets a PG diploma, goes to the industry, 1 year he works over there. Then he wants to, finish his MBA program, goes to some other university and say, I have done MBA first year, I have a diploma, give me admission in the final year. And that university doesn't accept that thing as an equal to their first year of their program. Then where that student will go? Then the whole thing would come to a naught. You see, the policy has to be, there must be consensus at the national level so that the degree diploma of one university is acceptable to the other.
So, Professor Naren, you're having to say something?
Only thing I can say in this regard that currently the obsession of the country, academician and stakeholders all included, for degree and diploma is the real undoing of all the system. Basically, its meaning to, as I understand, is that we are certifying a student to particular skill level. So once you get that particular skill level, you can get the job accordingly. It's not required that only 2 years skill is required. Sometimes 6 months skill can also give us a job. So, and when you are already having that skill, no university or institution should, insist that you again need to have this skill again, because the student has already got the skill. So outcome-based education, all that. Unfortunately, until we detach this degree, diploma with our employment, we would have to confront, we will continue to face this problem. Otherwise,
right. So you mean that the focus be on skill and on the content that particular institution has imparted, and and certification to that effect, and then the credit of that can be taken elsewhere. Anyway, that's it. That's a mechanism. It will take its time to evolve. So Mani, I wanted to add something, then we'll conclude it. Probably that already it's our experts are getting late. Yeah, Mani, quick comment from you. You wanted to say something?
Sir, it's absolutely fine. I think we have got a lot of insight today and points to deliberate upon. And being an academician, we have to chart out a plan how we can do it effectively. So we have got good insights, I think, today.
So thank you, Mani. As a one of the coordinator, though I have being a teacher, I have a lot to say, but
she's Manisha Mani who wants to share something. Manisha Mani, not Mani.
So anyway, now there was one more question. So I'm sorry that I think I confused the name from Mani. So Manisha Mani, quickly, what do you want to say?
Yes, also very good evening to all my professors, because I'm your student. I'm still
a scholar. You can take your mask off, Manisha.
HSB.
You can take your mask off.
Right.
And quick question or comment, please. Yeah.
Okay. Exactly, sir. So it's an honor to be able to speak on this platform because I'm a student of HSB. I'm already a scholar there, right? So, being the CEO of this incubation center that I'm working here, so I want to add to this. The fact is that this national education policy, because it has come up to 30 years. This took 30 years for us to revamp our national education policy. But again, yes, like you said, there are so many merits and a few. I won't say it's deep. But a few things that can be thought of again, right? But the thing is that, sir, how the industries can be, put more into education system is like a way out could be introduction of incubation centers like we have here, right? So, so it's like for the students to be industry ready. I mean, let's not say they need employment. Like everybody was also mentioning, Professor Sunita was also mentioning, Dr. Vishnui was also mentioning, Dr. Harbhajan was also mentioning that the university's stake is not to make the students get job. Instead, what we can do is we can make our students enabled in such a way that they will become job providers instead of job seekers. So why not a startup initiative should be introduced in the universities through incubation centers? That's my point, sir.
Thanks a lot. So now we can come to the conclusion. As I was saying that being a professor, I have so many pages jolted down for me. But considering that some of our experts are already like late, so let me conclude in 2 or 3 lines. That the more we debate, definitely more insights we'll have. So basically the issue is in implementation part, that the implementers, be it the government, be the like different stakeholders or the university, they need to understand the grandeur and the basic vision or purpose of this new education policy. Only then we can think of implementing. There's a lot of confusion. So that confusion has to be addressed. And moreover, as Professor Vishnui put it, that we need to understand the importance of education. And this really needed to be given like due importance that requires. So with this word, and one more thing, that the teacher basically is the linchpin of this entire implementation of this new education policy. And if we could really empower and train teachers, that a lot of focus has to be on the training of the teacher. Training doesn't mean that you go and teach the teachers. It basically means more exposure, more exchange, and more focused training programs for the teachers, giving every teacher 1 or 2 like assignments abroad here and there, and ability and funds and the vacations and the leaves and other things to attend different courses. Only then we can think of implementing this new education policy. Otherwise, like so many other things, it will remain in the papers. But hopefully, this will not remain in the papers and will achieve the grandeur that it is aimed at. So with this word, I thanks all the panelists, my colleagues, Professor Bansal, Professor Naren, Professor Jyoti, Professor Sunita, and Rajiv ji, who has, I think, already left because of some assignment, and to all the colleagues, my students, and whosoever is the audience. So thank you very much, and let's meet next year. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Harbhajan. Thank you, Professor Sanjeev, for giving us the opportunity, and it's really lovely interaction as a panelist. And thank you so much, my co-panelists. It was wonderful joining you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks one and all. Thank you.